Doom Eternal is upon us and Halo Infinite looms on the horizon. I think it's time to revisit some FPS history and remember some of those elements that can lead these games to greatness as well as those that can lead them to the bargain bin. I have to admit first and foremost that Wolfenstein 3D and Doom were a little bit before my time, or at least I was having more wholesome adventures in those days. But what I do remember about the 90s and early 2000s is that an FPS could stand among the video game marketplace without feeling like a clone. Actually, there were tons of Doom and Wolfenstein clones, like Zero Tolerance, Rise of Triad, and Super Noah's Ark 3D? Wait, that's real? Why the f*** is Noah killing the animals? Hold on, he's putting them to sleep? Okay. But despite the clones that crowded the B tier, the FPS genre was booming and reinventing with every iteration of 3D technology. While Doom could run on the Super Nintendo, albeit poorly, the N64 brought another level with games like GoldenEye and Turok. And subsequently, Xbox would redefine the genre yet again with Halo Combat Evolved. All of the above pushed the FPS genre throughout the pivotal period from 1992 to 2001 as the FPS was catapulted into video game and/or pop culture. And each one had its own tone, playstyle, and identity. There was an obvious exchange of ideas and inspiration that spread by way of mutual fandom and rivalry, but these games were eclectically borrowing from one another without failing to set themselves apart. GoldenEye does not play like Doom. There's a good bit of stealth and you don't rip through your enemies the way Doom Guy does. Whereas Halo forces you to tactically mind your position and approach, be it vehicular or quiet. You have to utilize cover, avoid being flanked, and beat the AI that can actually manage to outsmart you. But something happened over the next 10 to 15 years around the time that Call of Duty went futuristic. What had been a World War II shooter had wandered into sci-fi territory. The new Call of Duty would see players fight robots and venture to foreign planets with technology that lends superhuman capabilities. Sound familiar? It was starting to close the gap between the supposed historical combat simulator and Halo's hard sci-fi. I mean, Advanced Warfare is literally a direct synonym for Combat Evolved. See what they did there? It's like if I said, hey guys, check out my new game Boulevard Brawler, or Citizen Immoral. How about Satan Might Weep? What about Fauna Junction? And to further stir the FPS genre into the same hue of space shooter, Titanfall and Destiny entered the fray with virtually all the same trends, and as other shooters leaned into Halo's form, Halo leaned back their way by adding aim-down sights and taking aesthetic turns that pulled from the trends rather than its own previously unique identity. Halo 5 looks more like Titanfall than its original take, which was more James Cameron and less Tron. I realized that a die-hard FPS player could differentiate these games with laser precision. They might say I'm painting these games with a broad brushstroke, and they're not wrong. It depends entirely on how closely you look. I mean, I might say Castlevania is nothing like Ghouls and Ghosts, but let's be real, to most gamers these look the same. They're both 16-bit retro games where you move from left to right through a gothic-inspired landscape, fighting monsters and trying not to die. But to me, one of these is an awesome video game, whereas the other is a beacon of rage that fills the player with dismay and suffering. From where I'm standing, Titanfall, Infinite Warfare, Halo 5, Destiny, these games look the same. And that's coming from someone who grew up playing games like these and loves them when they're at their best. I still enjoy them despite their aesthetic missteps, but I wish they weren't afraid to have their own identities and break the mold of what happens to be trending. What followed all of this was the re-emergence of Doom, which goes down in my book as a triumph because it proved that a shooter could succeed without stepping in line. Despite surface-level comparisons, this game declines to conform to any of the conventions. You don't aim down sights, you don't take cover, instead dodging and outrunning your enemies. You don't even manually reload, you just shoot perpetually with a bottomless magazine until you run out of ammo. It never mimics the style of Titanfall or Infinite Warfare. It stays true to its aesthetic roots, returning to form but reinventing itself with a slew of new mechanics. Glory kills wield valuable resources that can make the difference of life or death on a split second's notice. Using the BFG or chainsaw at the right time is your get out of jail free card, but using it at the wrong time can be the nail in your coffin. While many shooters don't even have campaigns anymore, Doom places virtually no emphasis on the multiplayer. The single player is the meat. The campaign is a standalone feast of a game that does not disappoint. And this is practically unheard of nowadays, at least for an FPS. Doom preserves its nature despite its reinventions, remaining an outlet for the id for which the studio is named. It's a relieving expression of fury that lets you purge your rage by way of explosive, gory fireworks. It's kind of like a stress ball, just a lot bloodier. And because Doom's violence is so bombastically cartoonish and uprooted from reality, it's hard to imagine something as intentionally silly as Doom inspiring real-life violence.
We're not making Saw, we're not making Hostel. It's not a slow trickle of blood out of a sliced open wrist. It is some dude's head came off and Hawaiian Punch just starts shooting out of his head.
It actually blatantly contrasts with real life, especially when compared to the less gratuitous, less gory violence of, say, Modern Warfare 2, which has the player take part in a terrorist attack. Somehow, the playful nature of Doom's gore actually tones down the darkness, if that makes any sense. And unlike Wolfenstein, Doom never hijacks the game flow to lecture the player with shoehorned cutscenes that seek to redefine this into a heartstring tugger. Doom gives just the bare minimum exposition before Doom Guy does what all of us want to do and shoves that shit out of the way and starts slaying demons. Story can be great, but I can't stand when a game loses track of what it is. id Software has a wonderful way of trimming the fat where it's not wanted. Like in Rage 2, when you select your character, the game doesn't need the other guy muddying up the story with an extraneous arc that doesn't matter, which is why he dies instantly upon your selection and nobody f***ing notices. But I'm gonna get back on track here. Today, there's a whole new set of trends. Call of Duty, Battlefield, PUBG, Titanfall, every shooter has to have a battle royale now. And somehow, among the IPs created by id Software alone, there is more differentiation than can be found throughout virtually the rest of the FPS genre. Rage 2 has its own speed, unique upgrade system that hinges on exploration, not to mention a non-linear quest structure and open world that sets it apart from Doom. Wolfenstein by Machine Games, on the other hand, has more dedication to stealth and cover. Like Doom, it's incredibly fast and will make you sweat, but if you turn a corner into personal space with the wrong enemy, you are You don't have time to think, whereas Doom Guy would probably cut him up with a chainsaw on the spot. So my question is, can Halo do the same? Can it return to form while somehow reinventing the series? And more importantly, can it avoid becoming an amalgam of the current trends? We still know so little about Halo Infinite, but rumor has it that it will go open world in some capacity. Instinctually, I scratch my head at the thought of an open world Halo, but we saw Zelda go open world and it works beautifully. We also saw the same happen for Metal Gear, so maybe they can return to the aesthetic and tonal direction of the original Halo trilogy. Keep the classic gameplay, but in a structure that's not so on rails. They just might strike gold, or it could be a disaster, but we'll find out this fall, assuming it doesn't get delayed. In the meantime, enjoy Doom Eternal, and if you happen to like this video, consider checking out my other content. This is a new channel, so your like and or sub would go a long way. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.